Hello, Cinnabar Moths, or any kind of moth you'd like to be. Welcome to the Writer's Triangle, Cinnabar Moths podcast about all things publishing and books. Today, we are here with Kirstyn Petras, author of The Next Witness. Kirstyn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Okay, thank you for asking. Are you feeling excited about the release of The Next Witness coming out on May 3rd?
Yeah, I don't know if excited is the right word. It feels like it's been such a long time coming. Like I've been sitting on this story for so long. It's this weird sense of anticipation mixed with like overwhelming dread of like, oh my God, I'm finally letting my baby loose in the wild, right? Like it's this weird combination. So I am really excited, but it's I don't know. It kind of feels like pushing a baby bird out of a nest, just like hoping it's gonna be okay.
There's a little bit of nervousness with it.
Yeah,
You're
for
finally
sure.
letting it get into the public eye, and what's going to happen? You don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's totally understandable, but I'm sure that there'll be at least some positive feedback. I think it's
One
so.
would hope.
Yeah, yeah. You said that it's been a work in progress for a while. How long ago did you start writing Next Witness?
I wrote the first draft of this book when I was 15, just about to turn 16, and I am 28 now. So it's been a while. And obviously the book changed a lot. Like it's not at all the same story. It's been rewritten, completely shelved for like years at a time and then come back to and then scrapped and rewritten and whatever. But the basic tenets of the story are still the same. And I've gotten really close to some of these characters because it has been such a process. So I listen to any I would not recommend waiting this long to write a book to anybody else, but like that's just how this process works.
Yes, that is quite a while then. That's 13
Yeah.
years or
Yeah, it's just under 13 years.
so. So that was quite a while, and I imagine that was a lot of tinkering, a lot of changes, and a lot of evolutions as you also evolve. Your thoughts about
Hmm.
the process like for you.
Well, I think a lot of it was my own life experience and my own education. So I don't think it's a secret this book is a political thriller. I got really into politics when I was in high school, about at the time I started writing the book, and then did my undergraduate degree in international relations. I did my graduate degree in global affairs. So all of those studies and all of those theories and all of that learning 100% influenced the story and influenced how my thought process of the story and the universe in which it exists changed. So I think the process was a lot of like if you look at I mean this copy doesn't exist anymore, but if someone was to be unfortunate enough to look at the first draft compared to now, they would see someone who's grown up. They would see 13 years of adulting, like it's just so I don't know. I feel like this process has been so unique in that Melody, one of the main characters, really grew up with me, and her voice really grew up with me. So, yeah.
So for you, like you mentioned before, this is your baby, but it really does feel like it's something that's grown with you, and this is a baby that's been a long time growing up for a long time, I guess.
Yeah.
And would you say how was the process for you during when you're going through it and writing it and writing and using your education?
I,
That
yeah,
for,
it's been, yeah, I think it's not been, I'm trying to think of the right word for it. It feels like I'm living up to expectations. And that's my own expectations, right? Like that's my own standard. But because this is, like I said, kind of related to what I studied, like, I feel like I have to live up to the degrees to my name and be like, this is what happened. Even though it's fiction, even though it doesn't have to be. It's just one of those I I want like I have these things saying like I kind of know what I'm talking about, and I feel like my work has to say, oh yeah, she does sort of know what she's talking about. This makes sense. This is feasible, you know? So I don't know if it was like painful or euphoric or happy or whatever. It just kind of it, it felt necessary. Like I don't know a version of myself that hasn't always been writing a book. Maybe not this one, but hasn't always been writing a book. So for me it was like the process just was, you know.
Or
I don't know if that yeah.
they're changing, so the book must change too, type of thing.
Ex- yes, exactly that.
So it pretty much just evolved with you, and as you kept evolving and understanding politics and all of that, it's natural to be like, well, I have this new perspective, so I'm going to write in this new perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Like how the universe got to how it was changed about 3 or 4 times. So I hope people find it relevant and realistic in today's state, but I could also see in a couple of years people being like, what was she talking about? Like that makes no sense, you know? Things change so quickly.
Yeah, modern times things can evolve, and it may not feel as on topic, but I think that even with changes, people who are into politics will be back and be like, okay, I can see the time period this was talking of, commenting on.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. And especially because a lot of that wasn't recent. So I feel like so when I was going through this process and I was going through the edits, I had my sister helping me for a bit of it, and she was like, "Oh, was this related to X event?" or "Oh, was that related to Y event?" And this was written 5 years ago. So I think that there is something to be said about history is basically just a lot of history is the same problems repeating themselves over and over and over again in like a different cloak, right? So I hope that there is some semblance of it will in the concepts will endure, even if the specific policies aren't necessarily as realistic in a couple of years.
So you've gone through the entire process with writing it. When you were done, how long did it take for you to go from having this finalized draft to actually going into the
A while. It took a really long time. And a part of it was just so I finally finished the draft and I sent the draft to everyone I knew who would possibly be willing to read it. And I got some good feedback off of it, but a lot of it was just like, listen, you got to send it to somebody who's not your friend. And I was not ready to do that. I was like, okay. So I finally found, like, randomly found an indie publisher at who was a regular at a bar I was working at the time. And I ended up heard he had an anthology that my friend would have been like he had a story that was perfect for. So I ended up sending my friend to that guy for the anthology. And then because I had an in and was like, hey, you published my friend, I have good taste. You should look at my book. And that started in 2018. So yeah, I think and then it was kind of on and off and a lot of no wait, that wasn't 2018. I'm sorry, that was 2019. And then I think that kind of gave me the momentum. And then when we were all in quarantine and I had nothing else to do other than sit there with my artistic ambitions and no job, I was like, okay, so then yeah, that's when the querying really started was during the pandemic.
So you had this initial desire, you're like, okay, I'm actually gonna put it into the world. And you had that starting process, and then it really got kicked up during the pandemic. And
Yeah.
that process, you discovered Cinema Moth. How did that happen?
Yeah, so towards the end of 2020, I was getting really frustrated because a lot of the feedback I was getting was basically people don't want to read dark fiction in dark times. And same friend who I had said like, hey, submit to this anthology, my friend Nathan, and I ended up starting our own podcast kind of based off of that feedback of just like, we think it's ridiculous that people don't want to read dark fiction in dark times. There's always been a place for dark literature. And we ended up starting a podcast called Dark Waters. And through Dark Waters, we ended up meeting a whole bunch of indie authors who are all so fantastic. And through that, I was kind of introduced on Twitter to the indie publishing scene. And then I found you guys through that. So yeah, I found you guys through Twitter and through that process of just like, I know that there's a market for this book. I just need to find who will take it. And thankfully, you guys did.
Yes, that's an interesting evolution. You started off from a podcast of talking about, hey, why is nobody interested? Doesn't make sense. There's definitely readers out there, so the idea is wrong. And then
Yeah.
coming and finding us on Twitter and it to us. What made you decide to actually publish with us?
I really liked the kind of ethos of Cinnabar Moth. I liked how you represented authors, that you took authors from kind of all walks of life, all creeds of life. You published all sorts of different things. And I was like, if anyone's going to take this book, it's probably going to be the publisher that's uh, very much wanting to represent diverse voices, represent diversity in literature. And like also that's just a company that I want to work with. Like that's a publisher that I want to proudly say that I'm a part of. So
Makes me happy to
worked
hear
out.
that you came to us and decided to submit to us because you represent a part of the literary world and a view on the literature that you can find appealing.
Yeah, for sure.
So you submit to us, and as everybody knows, you're now being published with us. But what was the most surprising thing about this process of publishing with?
Honestly, I think it was the months of not having anything to do. And I was warned, like you guys had emailed me and been like, there's not going to be a lot to do for like this chunk of time. And I was like, okay. And I think in my head, I didn't really believe it. And then there just like wasn't a lot happening. And I was just anxious, being like, there's got to be something I can do. There's got to be something I can do. There's got to be something I could do. And yeah, basically, it's just been this past kind of month or whatever where we've been getting ready for publication that it's kind of been more of a whirlwind. So I think that it was just that anticipation. I wasn't quite I feel like my brain didn't realize what was happening until it was happening.
Yeah, it's something that can be a little bit strange because you go through all this effort, right? There's the entire process of writing a book, which has its own kind of frantic energy to it, in a sense.
Hmm.
Even if it takes a while, there's still always when you're in that writing mode, that energy for it. And then with finding a publisher to take it, there's a bit of a grind.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then once you've done that, then there's the hurry up and get this part done. And then there's just this waiting process where it's like, okay, well, there's nothing to do. And it's
Yeah.
actually nothing. It's not like,
There's
oh,
actually nothing to do.
that was
Yeah.
also pretty surprising for me when I wrote my book. Like, okay, I wrote it, but then I had this entire period of time where so little was happening about it that I genuinely forgot I had written a book for a while.
Yeah, and you can't like just start being like you can't like start the publicity too early on Twitter or too early on your social media because then people are gonna get sick of it and be like, I don't even care by the time it comes out. So you have to pace that as well. But yeah, I think that was the most surprising thing was just like sitting and waiting and pretending like I'm patient.
And it's very difficult. That was the most surprising thing about publishing in general. Would you say there's anything about publishing with us specifically that you found to be surprising or different from what you expected?
I don't think anything apart from just like the like waiting process. Yeah, I think that was the main thing, and I don't know if that would be different with another publisher. I think one of the things that I really liked about working with you guys was having so much say on the cover because I've heard it from both sides of people who are also working with indie publishers who have to like commission their own cover and just do it on their own, and then people who have no say at like might have like be able to give some feedback but don't have any say at all. So I think being able to have that kind of back and forth about the illustration, and I think it got a really good response once it was shown. So I think that was one of the pros for me, and like one of the things I was like pleasantly surprised about. But yeah, I think mostly it was just the waiting.
That's understandable. Waiting is not fun and can be a bit nerve-wracking sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm also happy to hear that you were able to feel good about being involved in your cover process, because cover art can be very important. I think it's a very important thing in general for books to have a cover that represents it well, and
Yeah.
having the author be happy with the cover is something I value a lot, because it is, after all, your baby.
Yeah, it's a very personal thing for sure. So that was nice.
So the next witness is coming out on next month, on 3rd. And so with its release being so soon, do you have any plans to celebrate the release of the next witness?
Yeah, my sister is actually throwing me a launch party. Her and the help of my friend Nicole are going to be throwing me a launch party at a bar down here in New York. And I'm really excited because I have a lot of friends that are like, yeah, we want to come celebrate with you. Um, and yeah, I think I've been told I'm going to be forced to sign copies. And I'm like, oh, okay, if you want that, I guess. Like, I don't know what to say to that. It's like, thank you. But yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be really fun, and it's hopefully with like obviously this is all TBD with like how coronavirus plays out over the next couple of months. But the hope would be it'd be really nice to have an excuse to celebrate with friends and like be all in one place, you know?
Yeah, I think that the pandemic itself does kind of make that a little bit iffy, but if it's possible, it'd be a nice break from being stuck by yourself in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
And you do have a valid reason to celebrate. A book being published is a big deal.
I think so.
And so you mentioned that your sister is the one planning out this launch party. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. She's the only one in my family who's read the book. So I have not let them see it, and they won't until it's out. So my parents have pre-ordered it. One of my uncles has pre-ordered it. Some of my cousins have pre-ordered it. So I'm sure that they're excited. But I was like, I don't want you guys to read this until it's like out of my hands, until like it's out in the world, and then you can have thoughts.
So even with your family, you're like, this my baby is too precious. I cannot show it to you. I'm
It's not that, it's that listen, my okay, I'm not gonna let my sister listen to this recording until the book comes out, but she's one of the people that the book is dedicated to. Like I am totally fine with sharing the story and sharing like my inner dark thoughts and all of the violence and everything else that's in the story. But like there's trigger warnings you guys put on this book for the art cover, right? Like I don't know how I feel about before it's out in the world. My my parents reading like certain scenes, like certain characters' interactions with each other. I'm trying really hard not to spoil it, but like it's a violent story, and I yeah, like I don't know how you like can go. I you know like that's just a weird moment to be like, hey family, do you want to see how I like planned these scenes? Like you know, it's just a weird moment. So it's not even like I think they'd be weird about it or ashamed about it. It's just it's a very personal thing where it's weird for me.
okay. And so it's just a matter of it's eventually gonna be available to them. Can't stop that. And
Yeah, and yeah.
okay,
When
yeah, that's fair.
when
But I imagine that they're excited for you because you mentioned they have pre-ordered and everything. So
oh, they're
that's always
super
nice to have some
excited.
real
They're
family.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. They're sorry for interrupting you. Yeah, they're super excited about it. My mom read, I think, the first version, like the 15-year-old version. And I was like, I promise you, it's very different now. It's better. It's better.
Okay. And so you have your parents who are and your sister and everybody who's excited about this, and then the next witness is also going to be listed in the U.S. Library of Congress. How does that feel?
That feels amazing. I was so excited when I heard that that was happening because when I was a kid, I grew up in a real small town and like going to the library and walking back home with like a pile of books with whatever my latest hyperfixation was. So I like one week it was Egyptian mythology, one month it was like medieval literature, like a lot of Nancy Drews, so many Nancy Drews. Like the library was such a big part of my childhood. And like I don't know if I want anyone under the age of 12 reading this book, but like, it's nice to know it'll be like in uh it'll be available to people. Like it'll be just like an accessible option. Like that means a lot to me knowing how much the library influenced my education as a kid.
Uh, Imagine for a lot of people that going to the library and having that experience, it's a very defining like memory, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think also another thing with it being in the Library of Congress is that, in a sense, libraries kind of immortalize books because
Hmm.
they're going to be around for a really long time if they're in a library, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it means that you can usually like even if it takes a second, you can find it again. So it's nice to know that it will live on, as it were.
Yeah, that's very nice. And so with that, and with it being released soon, it being the Library of Congress, uh, do you have any hopes of what you would hope happens next?
I'll be honest, a lot of my creative energy has been not as present lately, and I think it's just the anticipation of the release. I was fortunate enough to work as a guest editor for Punk Noir during another indie mag doing a horror themed month with them, and work's been just like crazy lately. So it'd be really nice to just kind of get back into that creative energy and like start really deep dive writing again. I have like four different things that I want to work on, and that's basically my hope is that once everything's done and dusted, my uh, like that kind of inspiration comes back.
Okay, so the process of like the waiting process and the anticipation, everything's kind of got you distracted right now, but once it's released and out there, you'll be able to free up kind of that mental space to start working on the other projects that you have going on.
Exactly. Exactly.
Exciting. And with that, you've mentioned that you have quite a few writing projects in mind already. Are you thinking of wanting writing to be a career path for you?
I am very, very fortunate right now in that my current job allows me to write, and it's nonfiction writing, but it is still writing. And I think absolutely, if at some point that transitions into writing novels and short stories becomes economically viable to be a career, that'd be amazing. But I think there is also that fear that once it becomes your career, it then is your job, right? So then there's the pressure of like, oh, I have to get up and go to work today, meaning I have to get up and like, I have to do this word count or I can't afford rent. So until if and when that is an option that I can do it and feel freedom within it, um, I'm okay with still having an outlet that is writing as my um, salary maker. You know what I mean? Like I think eventually it'd be great. It'd be so just a dream come true to be like my profession is I'm an author, but I also don't hate where I'm at right now.
I think that's a nice place to be where you're comfortable with what you've got, but if this were to happen, you're not going to say no.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like I do really like my job and I know a lot of people don't have that luxury to say that they like their job, but um my job allows me to kind of use the skills from my degrees while at the same time I have the ability to still write and exercise I mean, obviously I just said like not this very second, but most of the time still have the ability to exercise those creative muscles and kind of have the best of both worlds.
And so going back to the next witness a little bit, If The Next Witness was to become a bestseller, do you have any idea of what you would do then?
I'd faint. I don't know what happens after that, but if someone was like, your book's on the bestseller list, I would just drop to the floor, and then who knows? Who knows what happens after that?
So it'd be a shocker.
Mm. Like it'd be a dream come true, absolutely. But I don't, in that moment, I don't know what my actual reaction would be. And then like, oh, hey.
Yeah, I think it would be very exciting, but also it's not something that we necessarily imagine will happen. So if it does, it's never really just like, oh yeah, of course it'll be a bestseller. Like, what
Yeah,
do
well,
you
I think
think I
it's one
am?
of the,
Like,
yeah, well, I think it's that you walk into this process, at least my personal mantra, whatever, regarding this has been walk into this process and say, I want to share my art. I want to share what I've been working on. I want people to read the story and enjoy it. But you can't necessarily walk in as a first time published author and say, this is going to be the best book that was ever written. I'm going to get reviews saying this is the most prolific author since whoever. Like, this is the best book since, I don't know, some classical Russian dude. Like, you have to go in with some sense of realism of, is this a good way for me to start this platform? Is this a good way to amplify my voice? But at the end of the day, I just want people to enjoy the story. And if that's 5 people, great. And if that's a million people, amazing, even better. But that's all I want. Is just for people to read the story and enjoy it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it is successful. But I didn't like send it to be published with the expectation of everyone will love it and I'll be famous within 2 months, you know?
right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's always a matter of we want our art to be out there, and then come what may, our art's out there for people to enjoy.
Yeah, or you're just disappointed. Like if you set out with that intention and then it doesn't happen, like that's just disappointment versus if you set out with the intention of just let me see if people like what I do, then slightly better place to be.
And healthy expectations are very important with writing, and I think with everything in life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so going back to the concept of it becoming a bestseller, the next step for after becoming a bestseller, for example, the next witness becoming a movie or a TV series. Uh, if that were to happen, do you have any idea of who you'd want to potentially cast into certain roles?
I honestly don't know, but I think what I would love if that happened would be I live in New York, I live in Brooklyn, and 99% of my friends are performers, are actors, are musicians, are stunt doubles, are involved in the creative scene in some way. So I don't know if I'd want to like specifically cast anybody, but I think it'd be really awesome to be able to give back to that part, to like my people, right? To like my artistic friends and just have like, I don't know, like somewhere in the contract be like, people can email this person and be like, do you want to be an extra? Do you want to like play a song? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? So I don't know. I know that doesn't quite answer your question, but that in my head is what my ideal scenario.
I think that makes sense. You have these friends who have been supportive through your process, who are just part of your life that you really enjoy, and if you give them another opportunity, that'd be a way for you to have them also be involved in a sense in your own art, right? Because this will be your book being transitioned into a movie or TV show.
Yeah, and like share the good fortune, right? Like if I'm fortunate enough that that happens, I would love to pass on that opportunity to someone else.
Yeah. So following up on that, if The Next Witness were to become a movie or TV series, would you prefer a movie or would you prefer a TV series?
I think TV series because you can kind of deep dive more into specific scenes. You can add stuff in. There's not really as much pressure to take stuff out because you have more time. So I would say TV series, but I mean either's fine. But in this scenario, TV series.
Makes sense. I do think that I've watched quite a few movies that were adaptations from books and thought, why did they remove that thing? I wish they could have included this scene. I wish I could have seen
Yeah.
more of this.
I am the worst to watch a book to movie translation with because I will just get upset. I have a really hard time separating the two. So I feel like it'd be different if it's my own book because I'd just be so excited
Right.
that it became anything. But yeah, as someone who is that critic and is like, "Ah, how did they cut this? How did they cut that?" I think for my sanity to be safer to be a TV show instead.
And with it becoming a TV show and going through that process, what level of creative control do you think you would want over the adaptation and that entire thing?
Well, again, kind of going off of the realistic expectations, I think if we're talking like ideal scenario, I wouldn't want to I would have literally no desire to be in any writing room, to be in any whatever, but I would like to look at the script and be like, okay, fine. Um, but in this like realistic expectation scenario, I the only thing I would want is that, and if this is a spoiler, please cut it out, but there's one platonic male-female relationship in the book, and that would be the only thing where I'd be like, you cannot make that anything more than that platonic male female relationship. I want that represented. I want that on screen. That means a lot to me. And that is very essential to those characters, that is platonic and not romantic. And I think that would be a big fear of mine, that they would try to turn that into some sort of chemistry that doesn't exist, you know? Um, that and then what I mentioned before about having an opportunity to let other people in my artistic circle be a part of it.
So your main thing would be just wanting it to keep it true to your intentions with certain aspects of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, just like be true to the characters and like make sure that the characters look the way that they are discussed in the books, right? So like Derek Lynn should probably be Asian. Like probably.
Right, because that's how the characters are described in the book. Keep it to that.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And so let's imagine that you've gone through this entire process with The Next Witness. It became a bestseller, it got a TV series, and you went through the entire process with the production and everything, and it's finally coming out. Would you want to go to the premiere? And if you did, who would you take with you?
I would absolutely go to the premiere and I would take my sister. She's been such an essential part to this process and just been such an ear when I needed it and been such a support system rock. I would love to take her and celebrate with her.
Yeah, I think that sounds like it'd be awesome. Taking the person who's been closest with you during this entire process to share in that experience with you.
Yeah, she'd deserve it. She'd deserve a Hollywood party.
And so, following up on this concept of it being extremely successful, and with the writing career and everything, do you think that you'd want to become extremely famous and well known, for example, like Stephen King, or where you lost your anonymity as well, or what level of fame would you want if you were to achieve that level of success?
I don't know if I'd want like a Stephen King comparison, but I think if we're going with like fantasy, whatever, I would like a certain level of notoriety. I would like, how do I, okay, there's a story that I'm sure my friends are very tired of hearing. So if anyone of my friends is listening and has heard the Jeff Vandermeer story, you can skip over this part. But back in 2015, no, 2014, sorry, an author named Jeff Vandermeer released 3 books in a year. And he had a panel at the Edinburgh Book Festival, which holds a special place in my heart. I went there a lot of years. And I had the first 2 books, Acceptance and Authority, and then the third book, I'm sorry, Annihilation and Authority, and then the third book, Acceptance, was being released, like pre-released at the festival. And he was doing a signing afterwards. So I was kind of nervous because the second book, Authority, had lived in my backpack all summer, and it's seen better days. And I went up to him and was asking him to sign it, and he like signs acceptance, no problem. He signs annihilation, no problem. He looks at the second book, and he just looks at me, looks back at the book, and says, "Were you mad at me?" I was like, "Yes, you promised me answers and you didn't give me answers." And he just lost it. He was laughing so hard. And I would love to be that person for somebody, like I would love to be someone's author that writes their signature in a book and they just get so excited whenever they hear this story. So whether that's like Stephen King level or that's like like a I don't know, like a Stephen Gold's indie author level, like I mean, all respect to Stephen Gold, he's amazing, but you know what I mean? Like, I just want
Yeah.
that. I want to be someone's favorite writer.
So for you, it's less about the fame and more a matter of being able to have someone enjoy your work that much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But with that, would you worry or would you care at all about reaching a level of fame where you, for example, lost your anonymity, where people would recognize you on the street, or would that be something that you would just enjoy if it happened? What would be your feelings about that type of fame?
I think I just enjoy it. Like, enjoy it if it happens. If someone catches a picture of me walking out of a gym, just be like, I don't know, I feel like you have better things to do with your day, but like, okay. But yeah, I don't, I wouldn't mind. That'd be kind of cool if someone was like, "Hey, you wrote that thing," and it's like, yeah, like I don't know. I feel like to a certain extent, like if people start like following you around, like it's a little creepy. But if people knew me, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think anyone really likes being followed around, but I think that it can be enjoyable to have people recognize us because they appreciate our work.
Like, yeah, 100%.
And so, thank you, Kirsten, for coming on to the podcast and talking with me today and being on the Writer's Triangle. And
Yeah, thank you so much.
thank you for taking the time, and thank you for writing The Next Witness, which is coming out on 3rd of May, 2022. And thank you to all of our beautiful moths for listening. Be sure to buy The Next Witness when it comes out, or pre-order it if you'd like. And now, Kirsten, where can we find you? Do you have social media links that you might be able to share with the people?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Kirstyn_Petras, or you can find me on Instagram at Gotham City Ariel.
Yeah. And for all of our listeners, please be sure to visit cinemamoth.com where you can find the transcripts and we'll have the links to Kirsten's social media as well. Kirsten, thank you for talking with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I hope you have a good day, rest of your evening, and bye bye.